Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean. In today's episode, we have a very special guest with us talking about the Chicago Bulls. And we'll also do a breakdown of the Bears at the break. All this and more on this episode of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. But first, as usual, we'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. The Rockford Ice Hogs are the proud American Hockey League affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. You get to see the stars of tomorrow today with ticket prices starting as low as $9. $9 for tickets. It's fun for the whole family, only 90 minutes from the city limits. You get to see the stars like Brandon Mashinter, Villapoki, Marco Dano, and you get to see your red-hot Rockford Ice Hogs, winners of 3 straight games, go on to play. So they will be playing tomorrow, October 27th at home versus Charlotte, and October 30th at home against Iowa. So check out the lovely BMO Harris Bank Center in Rockford, Illinois. Check out icehogs.com. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. So before we get to our guests, I really had a thing about, I wanted to talk about the Chicago Cubs and the great season they had and how I'm disappointed that they went out with a whimper after such a great season. But I kind of scrapped everything I'd written and that I wanted to talk about, the notes I had. I kind of scrapped that. I want to take another week off and reflect about what they've done and give myself a chance to see a couple of the World Series games and see how the Royals, who are a legitimate good team, well-rounded team, how they're faring against the Mets before I make my decision and discuss what I want to discuss with the Cubs. So I scrapped everything and I'm going to leave that be. And I had some notes that I wanted to discuss about the Chicago Blackhawks, and I decided to scrap those too just because if you've listened to the show, you know that I started a new job recently where I travel a lot. So I'm going to be traveling the next several days. And I wanted to get this episode in quick so I can go hang out with my baby daughter and before I have to go back on the road. So I'm going to keep this a little bit quick. There's not too much to talk about with the Blackhawks. And I want to reflect on the Cubs a little bit, and there's nothing really to talk about the White Sox. So we're going to talk Chicago Bulls and Chicago Bears. I'm going to start with the Chicago Bears. They're in their bye week. I think we all thought they were going to be 3-3 when they won back-to-back games and they were playing the winless Lions. I almost said undefeated. It's the exact opposite. The winless Lions. I think we all took for granted that they were going to go in there and play the Lions that we had seen that they were going to be playing the Lions that we had seen the first 5 weeks rather than the Lions that we saw last year, who were, I think, 11-5. And what we got was the Lions of last year, who, well, we got some sort of hybrid that was a little bit closer to that Lions. They were able to move the ball down the field. They had a fairly explosive offense. Defense did just enough, and the Bears shot themselves in the foot as much as possible, and the poor officiating didn't help anything. And what we ended up, and we had poor play calling at the end of the game by John Fox. And what it amounted to was, instead of being 3-3, the Bears are 2-4. All right, we all know that. Blah blah blah. So let's talk about some of the things that have happened in that since last week, and some of the things that, where the arrow's pointing, sort of give grades on what people have done so far. And let's start with the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and that's the whole Jeremiah Ratliff situation. And honestly, I didn't know a ton about what had happened when he left Dallas. I knew there wasn't the best of terms, but I didn't know that a similar situation that happened in Chicago had happened to him in Dallas as well. But from all reports is that he got into a heated argument with general manager Ryan Pace, and it escalated to the point where they felt that the Chicago Bears security couldn't do enough of a job, that they had to call the Lake Forest Police Department and have him escorted off, and then they promptly cut him. And it's sad in one respect because he's the most heralded defensive player that the Bears have right now. He's multi-time Pro Bowler. He's experienced. He's played in this defense at a Pro Bowl level. But on the other hand, Ryan Pace, what he's doing is a hard job. He's dismantling the bad legacies of two general managers and tear everything down and rebuild it while still trying to somewhat remain competitive. And that's not an easy situation to be in. It's very easy to either spiral out of control and lose everything and lose the team. And that's, sure, you might get a great draft pick by doing that, but what do you gain for the next year? Is those teams that spiral out of control and get these great number one picks and things like that, how often do they come out of the toilet and rise to the top? Not that often. I mean, let's take a quick look at the history of the last X number of number one overall picks. Is the Houston Texans had the number one pick last year, and they're dog turd this year. The Kansas City Chiefs, they had the number one pick 2 years ago, and they're okay. And that was they had a plague of injuries. It wasn't that they were just a terrible team. But anyways, it's still they're a mediocre team. Indianapolis Colts 3 years ago, and that was the year Peyton Manning got hurt. So that was a different team. The Carolina Panthers in 2011, they were a bad team, and now they're a good team. So we have one. The Rams 2010, they are still a mediocre team. The Detroit Lions 2009, they just won their first game in Week 6. The Miami Dolphins 2008, they've been garbage ever since then. Oakland Raiders, the number one pick in 2007, they're still garbage. Houston Texans, number one overall pick in 2006, still garbage. San Francisco 49ers 2005, they took them a while, but they got a good couple years, and then they went back down to the toilet. The Chargers, the Bengals, so it's not like these teams turn around right away. I mean, the Bengals when the Bengals drafted that number one pick, Carson Palmer was the pick they took. That was 12 years ago. So, I mean, it's when you get these number one picks, it's not like you just turn around and you're suddenly good. So while you might get a great pick, what are you doing for the long-term health of your franchise? So I like the fact that they're trying to maintain a competitive spirit. They're trying to win games. They don't want to be in last place. What they lose, they lose. Where they pick, they pick. They're probably going to be somewhere in, I'm going to guess, the 8 to 16 range in their picks, which they're going to get a really good pick at that point. So you might as well try to win games, you want to maintain that the head coach has the control of the locker room, that your players are excited for next year, and that they see that you're turning around, and they see what you're building, and they see the improvement week by week. That's what you want from this team. That's how you build the franchise, not by tanking and getting the number one pick or stripping down everybody and just being awful. And I see a lot of fans and even some media people like radio outlets and some writers that think that the Bears are just god awful and that they should just give up and get the pick. And I don't see it that way. I really don't. This is a team that they have a vision, they have a plan, and sure, some things like Jeremiah Ratliff going unhinged caused them to escalate the plan and ramp it up a little faster than they had planned, but the same things are happening. Jeremiah Ratliff was not a long-term solution for this team. The goal of this team is to rid themselves of anybody that doesn't want to be there, rid themselves of any bad contracts, rid themselves of anybody that's not willing to play hard or try to work with this team and this coaching staff. And they want to get rid of all of the bad picks that had just been floating around because they were Jerry's guys or Emery's guys. They're getting rid of all of those people, and they're bringing in better talent. And in the meantime, because you can't just bring in talent right off the streets, because anybody that's talented is on a team right now. So what you have to do is build as best you can, get the best talent you can at the time at every position, and then slowly but surely upgrade over that talent. So if this is the offensive line you have, sure, you might have a weak spot at left tackle right now. But is it so bad? Are you able to be competitive with what you have? Yeah. So that's kind of a low man on the totem. But what about the safety situation? Ooh. You've got a rookie safety who's playing well, but you've got a second safety who's hurt that you just paid big money to that you're hoping comes back soon. And then you've got an undrafted rookie in there who needs help. And then the veteran high-paid guy that you have in there, he hasn't played well, so maybe that's a higher priority. So you look for that when a better talent, when somebody comes along that increases the talent level that you have at that position, you go for it and you cut ties with the people that's less. So you always are improving your team. And probably word that awkwardly, but you kind of get what I'm saying, is that they want to put the best team that they can on the field and slowly but surely improve until you finally get to the point where you are the Green Bay Packers, you are the New England Patriots, and you're getting tons of draft picks in, and you line them up. If they play, they play. If they can't play, they got to go. And that's the situation you want to be in, is you've got a good enough product on the field that you're constantly just, your GM, instead of trying to rebuild something, is retooling constantly. Right tackle had a couple bad games. All right, we got to bring in the next guy. Got to keep improving. Got to keep moving up. So with that, anything else I want to talk about? Yeah, John Fox and his. I don't remember if I discussed this. The poor play calling at the end of the Lions game, where they could have just run out the clock, and they decided to run it 3 straight times and punt it away to the Lions, who their explosive offense marched on the field and scored a touchdown, blah, blah, blah. John Fox still isn't really dealt with that, and that's the frustrating part of John Fox. I understand being a conservative head coach. I understand a lot of things that you do as a head coach. I really do. And I understand that some people are more aggressive than others, and some people want to trust their defense that will make the stop. But when you have the ball, when you're on offense and you can run the clock out, I really feel that you have to look at that as 2 opportunities to kill the clock. Is you do your best on offense and then trust your defense with that second shot. But when you run the ball 3 consecutive times, you are forfeiting that one time, because barring, like, you're a decent running team, but you're not the Cincinnati Bengals where you can just line up and smash mouth because you have the best offensive line in football. What you have with the Bears is a decent scheme and you're maintaining consistency with the run, and you've got a good running back. But when everybody knows what you're doing, and they're going to stack the box with 8-9 guys and gear up to stop the run, and you're not doing anything to trick them, to draw them off sides, and they know you're not going to pass, that's what happens. You're basically just giving the ball away and not running any time off. At least attempt to throw a screen pass. You're going to keep the clock running that way, and with the short passing game and how bad the Lions' defensive backs are, you've got the chance of breaking a tackle. They're much better, with a 9-man front to stop the run than they are with stopping a little bit of a pass, especially with Alshon Jeffrey. Alshon Jeffrey has been unstoppable because nobody on that team could cover him. Why not at least give him a jump ball throw it where only he can get it. Doesn't have to be a long pass. Set yourself up to get that first down, because if you get that first down, the game's over. But so that's the frustrating part, is you gave away one of your 2 chances and then you blew the other one. So that's my biggest pet peeve right now, is John Fox has been around the league long enough, and he should know better than to do that kind of stuff. Is you've got to at least put yourself in the position to get the first down. I get it, you trust your defense. That's why you don't go for it on 4th down when it happens. You punt the ball away. But you got to give yourself at least the best shot you can to win the game by getting that first down and doing whatever it takes to get that first down within the tighter confines. Like, it's not like, we're down by 3 and we're not in field goal range, we need to go for it on 4th down. It's nothing like that. But you at least have to put an honest to goodness 3-down attempt to get that first down before you punt it away. You can still believe in your defense enough to punt it away, but at least try to get that first down. So let's break this down now with position by position and what sort of our grades are and what we're going to expect from the second half. Let's start with offensive. We won't break it down individually. We'll go by division. So offensive line. I'm going to give them where they're at right now, a B. There's been a lot of issues with this team because you started off the season, you didn't know who your right tackle was going to be. You had some lingering injuries around with other positions. And it's kind of been a little bit of a revolving door. You moved your left guard or your right guard over to right tackle. You move in a guy you just signed partial way through the training camp to be your right guard. You lost your starting center for the season with an injury, and you bring in a guy who's just making his first snaps ever in the NFL, a 3rd-round pick rookie. You've got your left guard who's solid, and then your left tackle who is suffering from concussions and back injuries and all kinds of nagging things that you don't want your left tackle to suffer with. So then they bring in the guy that couldn't win the right tackle spot in Charles Leno Jr. And Leno Jr. has been playing decently. I'm not trying to think of what I want to say. Is he's not a Pro Bowl left tackle by any means, but he's serviceable out there, and it makes you think that when you get Bushrod back from when he's comes back from his injury, is he going to automatically get his job back, or is he going to have to win his job back? That's a question I have, because Bushrod didn't look very good when he was in there, whether that's his age, whether that's declining skill, whether it's nagging injuries, whatever it is, it's not looking that great. So why not make him be a competition? Because Leno has looked decent enough. Definitely something going forward into the offseason you want to look at improving, but he looked good enough to keep the position. Hronis Grasu at center, he had a rough first half of his first game, but he was also facing one of the best defensive lines in football. And give him a first half, and he comes back and plays decently, and then comes back with the next game and plays well. So this is I think that's shaping up well for the future for him and looking like a good draft pick, because he's coming in and being a serviceable center. And, he's only going to get better and stronger, I think. Your right guard position, that's okay. It's probably one you need to improve sooner rather than later, but it's okay for now. And then Kyle Long is quickly evolving into one of the better right tackles in the league. I mean, he's stopping some of the better. I mean, Justin Houston, he completely shut down. Ziggy Ansah, who was the sack leader in the NFL, he completely shut him down. And what else can you say about that? Is he's on an island out there taking these guys on, and he's doing a good job. So kudos to him for going from a Pro Bowl left or a right guard to being a really, really solid right tackle. So overall, I mean, it's not the line we thought we were going to have. It's not the line we expected to have, but it's been a pretty good offensive line compared to the last couple of years, and I have to give it a B. I mean, if they were playing like this and it was the line that we put together at the start of the season, maybe I'd give them a little bit of a lower grade, but when you have this many guys step up and they switch positions and the shuffling that goes around and they're still playing this well, I have to give them a high grade. Quarterback play, I'm going to go C+. Jay Cutler is staying well within the confines of this offense. And I've said it before, even under the old regime, under the Trestman era, is that Jay Cutler is a good quarterback when he plays within a system. It's when he goes rogue is when he brings trouble. When he tries to do things outside of what the scheme is, outside of what they're trying to do, what the game plan is, that's when he makes mistakes. Because he tries to force things and he tries to do things that he's not on the same page as the rest of the offense, and B is it's not anything he's practiced, so he's going rogue, and that's when he makes mistakes. And this regime has really kept him in check and got him to buy into the system, and that's half the battle right there. Is if you can get Jay Cutler to back what you're doing and not hate you and overtly disrespect you, is that you half the battle right there. So you've got Jay Cutler checked. Granted, it's a little bit frustrating because he's got a good cannon of an arm, and they're doing a lot of short passes and a lot of underneath things and a lot of safe plays. And that's a little bit frustrating because it's like watching a thoroughbred get his reins pulled and they're not letting him run. I understand keeping Jay Cutler in check because you don't want him to go rogue and you don't want him to make dumb passes and throw interceptions deep. But on the other hand, is you got to use some of his talent a little bit. And I don't know if it's because they want to make sure that they establish the running game once you get that running game in and going, and you've got the offensive line in a run block rhythm, because that takes timing, that takes gelling together, that takes teamwork. And once you establish that, maybe they go to more of a passing offense. Partially is it because so many wide receivers have been hurt. Partially is it because Jay Cutler was hurt. I don't know what these answers are, and that's a question I have going forward in the second half of the season is what are they going to do with Jay? Are they going to take the governor off him and let him throw it a little more, quit pulling on the reins so much? So let's see how that offense evolves. So again, I give the quarterback play a C+. Let's go backwards to the running backs. I'm going to go with the running backs. I'm going to go A. Matt Forte, 30 years old, not showing any signs of slowing down, which is awesome. I'm not sure if he's still the NFL rushing leader, but if not, he's right up there. But he's doing great. Jeremy Langford, the rookie running back out of Michigan State, he looks great. Even with injuries at that running back position, losing 2 for the season, you still are having good running backs and you're having good running back play. And there's no drop off when Matt Forte comes out. It's not like the previous years where you're like, oh, what the heck? Forte's out, nothing. I mean, Jeremy Langford has looked good out there. He's clearly the heir apparent, and it makes you wonder whether or not they're going to give an offer to Matt Forte a legitimate offer to try to re-sign him at this end of the season, or if they're going to say, we liked enough of what we saw from Jeremy Langford and we're going to go with the cheaper option. We'll talk about that a little more in a minute. Wide receivers, I'm going to go with incomplete because we don't know what to see. We saw a lot of games where Eddie Royal was injured and Alshon Jeffrey was injured, and even when they were in there, they clearly weren't at 100%. So it's incomplete. I mean, we're seeing guys like Cameron Meredith out there, and when Marquise Wilson and you have Kevin White is hurt and probably done for the season, and you have Marquise Wilson as your number one receiving option. You can't judge what their game plan is as far as wide receivers and how the wide receiver play is because you haven't seen it enough. You haven't seen a game where everybody's been healthy, and you're not going to see one this season because Kevin White's hurt. You may see Alshon Jeffrey, Eddie Royal, and Marquise Wilson be healthy together, possibly, but we'll start to give a grade then. But at this point, I'm going to go with an incomplete because we haven't seen enough to make a decision. And you can't judge a team on some second-rate veterans and some undrafted rookies at your wide receiver spots. That's not fair to your team. Moving over to the defensive side, I'll start positive first. Is the defensive the nose tackle play of Eddie Goldman? He's exactly what they were looking for. Eddie Goldman, I called it when the draft happened. Is that I liked the opportunity to take a second round defensive tackle much better than I liked going with the first round option of Danny Shelton. I thought that Danny Shelton was way too far of a reach for. I mean, the Bears had the number 7 pick, so picking Danny Shelton at number 7 was a ridiculous reach, an absolutely ridiculous reach. And I know for a fact that the Bears had absolutely no interest in Danny Shelton at number 7. And so all of the people that were out there going, well, I really like Danny Shelton. It's you bought into the Kool-Aid of picking players for need rather than for talent and best player available. And that's not the way to create a winning football team. So looking back on it, is Eddie Goldman was the 3rd defensive tackle taken in the draft. Danny Shelton, he's good against the run, but he hasn't been anything against the pass. And it looks like he's going to be a mediocre draft pick. And he ended up getting picked at, 14? 12. He got picked 12th. And it looking like he got overdrafted. And then the New England Patriots, they took Malcolm Brown, the defensive tackle out of Texas, and he's looked like a bust already. So you have Eddie Goldman, who comes in here for the second-round pick, who I loved as a second-round pick when they took him. I squealed like a little schoolgirl. And he's coming in here and looking better and better every week. He's getting pressure pushing up the middle. He's plugging up the hole as a run stopper. He's the guy at nose tackle, and he's only going to get better. Defensive, so that's your nose tackle. Your defensive tackles, the 3-4 defensive tackles. The 3-4 defensive ends. I'm going to give them. I'm going to give them B- C+. Just because I really, after the Ray McDonald issue, I really thought that what you were going to see is that Eddie Goldman was going to be your nose tackle, Jeremiah Ratliff was going to be one defensive end, and Ray McDonald was going to be another one. So you have 2 former Pro Bowl defensive ends being your guys to help anchor this defensive line, and you don't have either one of them right now. Is one, he didn't even play a snap for the Bears because of off-the-field issues, and the other one because during this past week had an off-the-field issue and got cut. So you have an out-of-position guy in there. You got an out-of-position guy who's Will Sutton, who's a 3 technique that should be on a 4-3 team, and he's playing fairly well. And then you've got former college standout turned NFL bust Jarvis Jenkins, who's come in and played really well. I mean, really well, earning himself another contract. And now at the point where you have your backups are Bruce Gaston and Mitch Unrain. You don't know either one of those guys because they weren't there during training camp. So, and you have Ego Ferguson you lost for the season. So you've got a guy that everybody and their mother thought was going to get cut in Will Sutton, and a guy that everyone and their mother thought was going to be either cut or a backup in Jarvis Jenkins, and they're the starting defensive ends, and they're playing pretty well. So that says a lot for that position. I mean, sure, those two positions are going to be something that you look to upgrade eventually, but as of right now, you've got to be pretty happy with the play you're getting so far. Then you got to move to your outside linebackers, stay on defensive line. You started the season with Jared Allen as one guy, and Pernell McPhee, your big free agent signing, as the other. And the Bears parted ways with another bad contract of Phil Emery, and they got rid of the Cowboy, sent him to Carolina, where let him play for that team, let him play for a 4-3, and finish out his career like that. You move Sam Acho, who was a one-year contract guy in, and he's a high-energy guy. You've got Lamar Houston, who was a big-time free agent last year. He's coming in and playing well as an outside linebacker. And then Willie Young, who was another guy that everyone thought would be out of position, and it was a trade bait or either cut bait. And he comes in, and he's getting regular rotation time after Pernell McPhee. So I'm going to say is my expectations were pretty high going in with what we were going to get production from the outside linebacker spot, because A, that's the focal point of this defense, and B, because we had so many guys that were high dollar guys that I figured that somebody had to step up, especially with new defensive coordinator Vic Fangio, that the system was going to be right. People were going to be put into positions where they're going to make plays, and really, it's been a disappointing. I mean, Lamar Houston is getting there, but he's still recovering from injury. Pernell McPhee is the only guy that's doing anything, and I'm still a little bit. I mean, he's leading the NFL in quarterback pressures, but he's not getting there enough, and they're not getting enough pressure to overall at the defensive or the outside linebacker position. So I'm going to give them a C- right now. That's this absolute position that they're going to have to improve on, and I would be shocked if at that high of a position that they don't go after an edge rusher coming into the draft next year. I mean, that's probably going to be one of, if not the highest priority. Inside linebackers. You're looking at Shea McClellan and Christian Jones are your inside linebackers. I was going into the season, you never in a million years would have got me to believe that was going to be your middle linebackers. But that's what it is. And at times, Shea McClellan has done an admirable job, but then other times he's looked embarrassing out there. And part of that is it's a position change. He's learning a third position since he's been in the NFL. And part of it is just he's not a talented enough NFL player. You're not going to win a Super Bowl with Shea McClellan as your middle linebacker. Is he good enough right now? Well, yeah, he has to be, because you've got Lamin Barrow and Jonathan Anderson as your backups. And then Christian Jones, he's a guy that's hot or cold. I mean, he's granted the last couple games he's played well, but he's another guy that he's just not good enough to be. And I love the Christian Jones story of being undrafted and coming in here and performing so well and last year and maintaining, even after a general manager regime change, staying on and getting a spot and getting a chance to earn a starting spot. I love the story. I like Christian Jones. I love him as a backup. I love him as a special teams guy because he's just a high energy guy. He's a good character guy. You know, people seem to love him on the Bears, but the issue is that he's not talented enough to be a Super Bowl caliber middle linebacker or inside linebacker. So, both of those positions need to be upgraded. So again, I'm giving that a C-. Move to our cornerback spots is another issue where going into the season we thought Tim Jennings and Kyle Fuller were going to be the starting cornerbacks, and then Alan Ball and Tracy Porter stepped up, and there was a game where they were the two number one starting over Kyle Fuller, and Tim Jennings clearly gone. And so this is another situation where you've got cast-off veterans and a guy who's a hotshot second-year player who just hasn't reached his potential by any stretch yet, and shows flashes of being great and flashes of being a bust. Kyle Fuller is like an enigma. I think talent-wise, I think he's got it. It's that mental hurdle. I really think. I think he's just blown his confidence, and if the Bears coaching staff can't develop that confidence back and that swagger back that you need as a cornerback in the NFL, that short memory, the tenaciousness, that, you know what, if you fall down, you get right back up and dust yourself off and go back at it. If you can't do that as a cornerback in the NFL, then you're not going to be a cornerback in the NFL for long. And Kyle Fuller is going to have to realize that soon, is he needs to get up and man up and have a short memory and go out there, and if he gets beat on a play, he goes back and makes the next one. I think he's got the talent to do it. It's, does he have the mental state to be able to do it? Alan Ball and Tracy Porter, they've outkicked their coverage as far as what you expected out of them. I mean, Alan Ball and Tracy Porter on one-year deals, very low money deals as far as NFL goes. So you got to be excited about what they brought to it, and you want to improve. Again, you're not going to win a Super Bowl with Alan Ball and Tracy Porter and 2015 Kyle Fuller as your cornerbacks. But then again, is they're outplaying what I really expected the cornerback position and much better than they were last year. The one really low spot so far is Sherrick McManus. I think he's looked miserable this year. So the cornerback spot definitely is going to have to get improved, and it's going to have to get improved next year, and that's going to be a high priority, I think, for the Bears as well. Not as high as edge rusher, but it's going to be up there. So I'm going to give this a C, a grade of a C. And then last but not least, I'm going to go with the safeties. Ryan Mundy and Antrell Roll were expected to be your starting safety dynamic duo. Ryan Mundy was one of the brighter spots on a really poor defense. I thought he played better than most people on the defense, which is not saying much. But I figured with this coaching staff and having the offseason and getting healthy, and teaming him up with a legitimate NFL caliber, safety partner, that you were going to get a fairly decent safety combination. And instead you get Antrell Roll, who just doesn't look like the guy. I mean, I don't think Antrell Roll was ever great by any stretch, but he doesn't look as good as he has in previous years. And I don't know if it's injuries plaguing him, or if it's just age, or if he just doesn't care anymore. Whatever it is Antrell Roll is not the guy that he has been. And he was out for a couple weeks, and they had undrafted rookie Harold Jones Quarte filling in for him. And, when you already have a defensive line that's not getting enough pressure and cornerbacks that could use improvement, and you're an undrafted rookie free agent who gets thrust into the starting safety spot, what do you expect from the guy? I mean, he gave you better than what you expected, but it still wasn't enough. So Antrell Roll coming back, and you hope that he can improve on that safety play, but you don't know. The other spot, Adrian Amos, pleasant surprise. I liked him coming out of Penn State, but I don't think I expected anything like what he's been playing like. I figured he would be a little bit of a timetable kind of guy, where he comes in, makes his team on special teams, and eventually works his way into a starting role after a couple years. That's what I figured. But he gets thrust right into the starting safety spot, and I think he's been been the best defensive back the Bears have had this season. So I'm going to go with safeties, a C-, because I don't think Antrell Roll has been what they expected. Ryan Mundy got hurt for the season. Harold Jones-Quartey is undrafted rookie and not talented enough to be an NFL safety right now. And then Adrian Amos brings the rest of the grade back up. So overall, I really think the Bears' arrow is pointing up. Sure, they're not winning a lot of games. Sure, they've lost some ugly ones, but this is a team that is still competing. They're still improving. They're still figuring out who they are. They're still recovering from injuries, and they're going to get better. They're shedding off those bad contracts. You're going to have money to work with. They're shedding off of bad attitudes, so you can get the worst thing you can have is a bad attitude veteran that is going to ruin the attitude of young kids that are looking to him as the veteran and as the clubhouse leader. It happened with Lance Briggs. I loved Lance Briggs. I thought he was one of the best linebackers that the Bears ever had. But the issue is that once Lovie Smith was gone, he became a locker room nightmare. He was bad attitude. He was bad for the coaching staff. He was bad for the other players. And there was absolutely, I think there was a better chance of me buying some of those spring shoes and jumping to the moon than there was of bringing Lance Briggs back. Because he was just a headache, and his talent is gone and shot. And that's why nobody else picked him up either. Because he couldn't play, and he was a headache. So why would you want that? So the Bears are going to keep improving. They're going to keep bringing guys in. If guys can't play, they're not afraid to make a trade in the middle of the season. They're not afraid to cut a guy in the middle of the season and bring somebody off the streets to see what they have. That's what they're going to do, and they're going to keep the model is going to be improve talent when they can. Whenever there's a top talent available. So like when the off season comes about, they're going to sign some free agents, and they're going to put that talent at the top. And they're going to draft guys, and they're going to put that talent at the top. And then everybody that gets pushed towards the bottom, they're going to churn that bottom of that roster, and they're going to keep churning the bottom of the roster until they find the right guys. Whereas previous regimes would keep churning the top of the talent roster because they weren't drafting right, and they weren't signing the right free agents, and guys would get hurt. And this regime is better at talent evaluation, and they're going to keep throwing that top talent on the top of the pile. And then they're gonna build depth by churning the roster. You don't play well, you're out. They're gonna bring somebody in that can, and I like that. I love what they're doing. They're creating a winning atmosphere by getting rid of bad apples. They've got a veteran coaching staff in there who I agree with you fully. John Fox is not a guy that's going to take you to the Super Bowl, but he's a guy that is going to stabilize this ship and keep everything going smoothly until you get that guy once you're ready to take this next step. It's sort of like what the Cubs did, where they had a manager they liked and he was perfectly okay. And then Joe Madden came available, and they were like, well, Joe Maddens don't come available very often. We've got talent enough to at least compete this year. We're going to pull the trigger. And I think that's what's going to happen with John Fox. You're going to give them a couple years with the Bears. He's going to be able to stabilize them. They're going to play better than what you expect in their talent level. And then once they get that talent level, you're going to look and see, all right, John Fox is at the end of his contract. John Fox is older, and we're going to bring in this new coach. And it's going to happen. And that's going to be the guy that takes them to be a super competitive team. John Fox is going to stabilize the ship and get the best out of everybody and work smoothly with Ryan Pace, so that's not a nightmare. He's not a guy that's going to openly fight with the general manager, and you're going to give the general manager a guy he can trust and he can talk things over with until he gets his bearings and gets in there and gets the team he wants. And that's what you're going to see out of the Bears for long term. Now, short term, you got Minnesota Vikings coming up next week on Sunday. Minnesota's got a good defense, but they're not. And right now, they would be a wild card team, but they're not an unbeatable team. If the Bears want to compete and the Bears want to make a name for themselves, this is one of those games where they have to win. When they play Green Bay, there's nobody says, "Oh, you have to beat Green Bay." They're not at that level. Nobody's expecting them to. You just sort of take that off the table. Same thing with Arizona and Seattle. You take those three off the table. But then you come down, Oakland is a game you're supposed to win. Kansas, to make sure, like, there's games when your team is with as little talent as the Bears and with low expectations like the Bears, there's games that you just throw right out the window that there's no chance for them to win. And I'll give those, the first three out the window. The 11th week against Denver, throw that one out the window. The week after that against Green Bay Packers, throw that one out the window. Those are games they're not going to win. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay to taking those losses. It's that next tier, the teams that are right in the middle of the pack they're not playoff teams, but they're not the bottom burners of the league. Those are the games that define you. Those are the games you have to win. And so far, the Bears went in. They beat Oakland, and they went to Kansas City and beat Kansas City. And those are the two of those teams that are middle of the pack teams that the Bears are gauging themselves at right now. And they're trying to push themselves to be better than those teams. And Minnesota is another one of those teams. They're at the upper echelon of those middle teams, but it's a game that the Bears need to go in there and win. Now, there's games that you expect the Bears to win, like Detroit. You expect them to beat Washington. You expect them to beat Tampa Bay. And they're going to have to win those games. But in order to be a presentable team, you've got to go in there and win a bunch of those teams that you're evenly matched against. And Minnesota is, I think, better matched than the Bears, but you have to go in there and win if you want to maintain this winning culture and have a halfway decent season. Same thing with the week after, going to San Diego. San Diego is a team that's hot and cold. Sometimes they go out there and play a good game and beat you, and the next time, you don't know what you're going to get. The Bears have to gauge themselves to Seattle. The week after, in St. Louis. St. Louis is a hot and cold team. One game they can completely dominate you with that amazing defensive front, and then the next they're just blowing games out and getting beat bad. San Francisco, you should beat San Francisco. They're not a good team. Home against Washington, you should win that. Washington's not a good team. Then you go at Minnesota. That's another toughie that you have to, show your toughness there. And then you get Tampa Bay, Detroit to finish the season. So realistically looking, I think they split against Minnesota. Let's say they win home, which is next week. So that takes them to 3-4. Tough games. It's a Sunday night game against San Diego. I'm going to say they lose that one, and then they go to 3-5. I say they beat St. Louis. I think they're going to be good enough, and it's not a primetime game. There's nothing in the lights to spook Jay. I think they win that one, so that puts them at 4-6. Then they play Denver. I don't see any chance of winning that one, so that's 4-7. Then they play Green Bay, 4-8. Then they have San Francisco, who I think they beat, and that's 5-8. Beat Washington, 6-8. They lose to Minnesota. That's 6. Or wait, what am I at? We're at 2. My math skills, I lost it here. We're at 2-4, 3-4, 3-5, 4-5, 4-6, 4-7. Sorry, they're 4-7 after losing to Green Bay. They're 5-7 after beating San Francisco. 6-7 after beating Washington. 6-8 after losing to Minnesota. 7-8 after beating Tampa Bay, and then they finish 8-8 by beating Detroit, because I said they were going to split against Detroit. They're going to lose 2 to Green Bay, split against Minnesota, split against Detroit. That puts them at 8-8. And I think that's fairly realistic. I mean, they could easily lose both to Minnesota, both to Detroit, lose against San Diego and to St. Louis, and I mean, that's a slippery slope right there. Is you lose to Minnesota, then that sends you down to 2 in a row. San Diego, that's 3 in a row, and that makes it a must-win game against St. Louis. So you're not on a, because if you don't beat St. Louis at that point, you're on a four-game losing streak. Then you're going to lose to Denver and Green Bay. That's a 6-game losing streak, and that's where the wheels start falling off. That's where veterans start quitting because they don't want to get injured. That's where rookies stop caring and stop progressing, and that hurts them in the long run because a veteran can come back the next year and turn it back on. A rookie loses all of that ability to, or that time on the field to improve and continue to get better for next year, because if they quit, that's lost time right there. It means you have to reevaluate in the off season because suddenly guys start quitting on you and you start questioning whether or not they have the attitude that you want around. Whereas if you're winning, at least doing 500 level, that you might keep them because it's going to take a 6-game losing streak to start losing them. So it's a slippery slope. It's a really slippery slope. And I think it really starts right now. I mean, it should have started with that Detroit win, or that Detroit loss. That should have been a win. But Minnesota, I think, is going to be an important linchpin type game. Is you've had 2 weeks to prepare for them. You're at home. They're a good team, but they're not a great team by any stretch. And you've really got to compare yourself to them because they are a wild card team right now, and they're in your division. It's on your home field, and it's going to be what keeps you from a long losing streak. So this game is a big one. So I guess that's going to leave it with the Bears. I'm going to take a quick second before we go in with our Bulls guest. And for those of you that have never listened to this show before, we are by the fans for the fans show. And we, unlike a lot of the radio shows you might listen to that are on some of the popular stations that do sports, is we don't hate our fans. This is we love when you contact us. I've had people, though, I mean, just say, "Oh, you're wrong," or "I disagree with you," or whatever. I don't care. That's what the part of the awesome fun about sports is you discuss it and you talk about it and you put hypothetical situations and the fantasy angle. I mean, there's so many different things about it that it just basically comes down to talking and arguing about sports, and that's the fun part, and I love it. I love it when fans are like, of the show are like, I don't agree with you, and that's part of the fun because we all see it from different angles. So again, this is a by the fans for the fans show. If you have an opinion and you let me know what that opinion is, I'm going to share it. I'll probably even invite you to come on the show to talk about it if you want to do it. I've invited a couple people and they've declined. They said they would rather just speak in private, which is perfectly fine as well. But if you ever want to come on the show, you're more than welcome. This is by the fans for the fans. I'm not going to belittle anybody. Your opinion is just as valid as mine. And with that, I need your word of mouth to grow the show. I mean, last episode, I had by far the most number of listeners ever, and that was a good feeling. I sat down with my wife and I double checked the numbers. I rarely check them. I'm not, that interested in the numbers per se, but I sat down and I looked at the numbers and I was like, wow, I can't believe that many people listened to that episode. So that really made me feel good. So you guys are really spreading the word, and that makes me feel good. So if you want to be a part of something, be part of the ground level and keep this growing, tell your friends about us. Hit subscribe, however you listen, on YouTube, on Stitcher, on iTunes, whatever. Just hit subscribe, leave feedback, leave comments, and share it with your friends. And make sure you hit us up on our social medias. Twitter at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, the website SwerskiSports.com. And I guess that's about it on that. So I want to welcome to the show we haven't had a Bulls guest in a while, and we have Michael Whitlow. And Michael is the co-editor of the BullsBeatBlog, which is Twitter at BullsBeatBlog, or the website Pippen Ain't Easy. Like Scottie Pippen, Pippen Ain't Easy. All right, everybody, we've got Michael Whitlow, the co-editor for the BullsBeatBlog from Fansided at PippenAin'tEasy.com and at BullsBeatBlog on Twitter. Michael, thanks so much for being on the show.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So I've got some questions for you with the extended play of the Cubs and hockey season starting and the Bears not being nearly as bad as I thought they would be. I have not been keeping up with basketball, so shame on me. So need some of your insight here, and I've got a few questions for you. Some of them are from fans, and some of them from me.
All right, sounds good.
So the $100,000 question is the addition of Bobby Portis and the coaching change from Thibodeau to Hoiberg enough to beat LeBron James?
Wow. Getting right to it. That's a tough question. It's a good question for the fact that I think Hoiberg's offense is dynamite. I think when you watch this team play, it's more free-flowing, it's quicker, it's not necessarily fast, it's quicker pace, it's under control, a lot of pick and rolls, a lot of threes. It's more up to date with today's day and age of space and pace in the NBA. I think Portis fits that mold perfectly as a stretch four, and I think he's going to be a dynamic playmaker for the Bulls in key situations this year if Hoiberg gives him a chance. It's going to take some time. I mean, he is a rookie. He only spent 2 years at Arkansas, but I think he will be a key part of this team. He can do it all. He can rebound. He can shoot. His jumper looks 10 times better than it did at Arkansas. So he's definitely making strides. He made strides this summer with the Summer Bowls. He looks like a guy that can really contribute and kind of be, I guess, it's a little too strong to say it now, but I guess he can be like a Draymond Green of this team. He can kind of do it all for this team.
Yeah, I'm just hoping he can be a fierce rebounder, because I felt like with all the hype the Bulls have had, that nobody's been that guy that can go in there and get a rebound when you need it, offensive or defensive.
Absolutely. And it's funny that, talking about LeBron James, Tristan Thompson's a big reason why the Bulls lost in 6 games, back in the playoffs last year, was because the Bulls couldn't keep him off the window. And Bobby Portis is a guy that can do that.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
Absolutely. It's the thing with Portis is, I hope both fans give him a chance to, progress and develop into a really good player, not expecting to come in and, average 12 to 14 points and 9 rebounds a game right off the bat. I mean, it's a congested front court right now with Gasol and Noah and all the other pieces to the puzzle, but he definitely can become an intricate part of this team as the years go on, and as, especially in his rookie year. If Hoiberg gives him a chance and balances out the minutes like he did last night, I really think Bobby Portis can be a good part of this team.
I really think the fans will give him a chance. I mean, look what they did to Mirotic. He came in with a lot of hype and came off the bench and didn't get a lot of minutes early on, and people really gave him a chance. And plus, I think there's going to be a lot more eyes on Rose and Butler after the big contract, and is Noah healthy, and Mirotic in year 2, and Gasol. I think there's going to be I think the pressure is not on Bobby Portis from the fans.
And that's a good thing, because there's so many good pieces for this Bulls team. I mean, now Derrick Rose came back last night in a limited role, but he looked really good. His legs looked fresh. He looked very comfortable in the system. Jimmy Butler finally got his big contract. He's ready to go. Joakim Noah looks healthy. I mean, the core guys of this team are starting to look like the guys of old, the guys that we've seen. And albeit they can't really get stops right now defensively, it's going to take some time. But from what they've shown so far in the preseason, I think the Bulls can be a really good team as the months go on, that's for sure.
That kind of leads me to the next question is, this team really struggled on defense last year with Tom Thibodeau, who's a defensive guru. Does that concern you going into this season with a more offensive-minded head coach like Hoiberg?
Absolutely. I made an appearance on a podcast recently, and I talked about that and how I watch a lot of college basketball, and I watched Fred Hoiberg's teams at Iowa State, and they were really good offensively. They had a lot of different pieces, a lot of versatile pieces to the puzzle, but the problem was they couldn't get stops when they needed to. They were, I believe, in the defensive rating, they were 71st, I think, in the country last year, and hence why they got knocked out in the round of 64 in Hoiberg's last game with the Cyclones. So that's been my big thing, obviously, other than Derrick Rose's health. And that's been my big thing, is can they get stops when they need to? Because they're going to be playing some good offenses this year, you know, in the Eastern Conference specifically. I mean, you got Miami back and healthy. Cleveland, obviously, when they're healthy, they're the best team in the conference, in my opinion. You got Milwaukee, Toronto, Washington. There's a lot of good teams in the East, and the Bulls are going to have to get stops if they're going to make that run to the NBA Finals.
So, are Rose and Butler going to be able to coexist, or is this going to be a recipe for disaster by the end of the season?
I think they will coexist. I think the whole beef was just kind of something to talk about over the summer with Butler's pending free agency, and the Bulls made it clear they didn't want to let him walk, and they didn't. You know, they gave him a nice little new 5-year deal, you know, worth upwards of $90 million. So Butler got what he wanted, the Bulls got what they wanted, and Rose recently addressed it, and he said, you know, the reports of him and Butler having issues are completely false. He said he loves Jimmy as a person, he loves him as a player, and I believe him. I don't think there's any issues in terms of Rose and Butler off the floor and on the floor. I think they're going to be dynamic together in this offense.
So that's our backcourt. With Joakim being healthy, well, hopefully healthy, as healthy as he can be, and Paul Gasol and Nikolai Mirotic playing together in international ball, and you know, playing well. How do you see this front court shaping up?
It's interesting. It's probably the biggest thing that's been talked about, other than obviously Rose and Butler and the defense. That's the big thing, is who's going to get minutes when, how many minutes, you know, each night. There's a lot of talent in the Bulls front court. I mean, the Bulls probably have the deepest front court in the league, and, you know, it's going to be tough for Hoiberg at first, but he's a rookie head coach. He's going to try and experiment with some new things. I applaud him, although I don't agree with him starting out with Nikola Mirotic and Pau Gasol starting together, because I think that's a recipe for disaster defensively. Offensively, they're going to be dynamic together. They have a lot of chemistry from their Eurobasket time over the summer. So it's one of those situations where he's got to, you know, experiment, see what happens, try different things here, maybe switch things up in 2 weeks and put, you know, Portis in the starting lineup. Who knows? So I think it's just something that Fred's just going to have to toy around with a little bit, kind of get a feel for, see who does what. But I think so far it's been a positive. I mean, Mirotic looked positive last night against Dallas. You know, Taj and Joakim, they looked really good together last night on the floor. The big passing in the paint was a beauty. I mean, it just seemed like, you know, they knew where each other was at. It's like, you know, they've been playing with each other like Duncan and, you know, Robinson at times. They looked really comfortable on the floor together. So I think it's just going to be something that's going to be experimented with. But I think Hoiberg realizes that he needs to get guys minutes. He needs to keep guys rested and fully healthy for April, May, and June. And I think he'll do that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a huge key is limit Joakim Noah's minutes now so you have him at the end of the year.
Absolutely. You need his energy, especially in the playoffs. You know, you need a guy that can get you a big rebound just like Portis can. You know, you need a guy that can bring that spark off the bench. And I think although Mirotic and Noah may be a better fit, I think Joakim coming off the bench is really, really good for the Bulls in terms of energy, in terms of, you know, he can pole vault you back into a game just with his energy alone. So I think that's a good move. I know he's not really too keen on it. He seems a little disappointed of being, quote, demoted to the bench. But I think this is a good thing for Joe. And I think in a contract year special, 30 years old, he's going to produce. And he's going to make it tough for the Bulls to keep him on the bench.
So with Dunleavy's injury, who's going to ultimately end up filling that void? Is it going to be Tony Snell, Doug McDermott, or none of the above?
So that's a great question again. From what I've seen, it looks like Fred wants to go defense and keep McDermott scoring coming off the bench, and I think that's a good move. You could make the argument that you can hide McDermott's defense more with the starters, but then again, you have Mirotic and Gasol up front starting out, so you might have to tweak that around if you do end up starting him. But I think the best option right now would be to Tony Snell, and I think Tony Snell played really great, against Dallas. He had, a trio of steals. He looked really active. His hands were in the passing lanes. His jump shot looked like it was cleaner. It seemed like he was shooting with more confidence. I think he's ready to take that role of Mike Dunleavy until Mike gets back, because I think they'll insert Mike in, because I think he's a seasoned veteran. He's been there before, and he fits the system, I think, really, really good. I think Mike is going to explode when he gets back in terms of three-point percentage, open looks, and that'll make the Bulls that much more dangerous.
Yeah, I like to think that Mike Dunleavy last year was the enigma for the Bulls. And sometimes he was their most important player in some games, and then other games he was the worst starter that they had. It was sort of infuriating.
Absolutely, yeah, and it was. I mean, he had the ankle issue. He missed near 20 games last year, and I believe the Bulls went 9-11 or 9-12 with Dunleavy out because of the ankle issue. And like you said, there's times where he looked like the X factor, the key to the Bulls' success, and there was other times where it seemed like he couldn't make a shot to save his life. So I think he's going to take his time, because back injuries are tricky, but when he comes back, I think that makes the Bulls that much more dangerous.
I know the Rose injury was minor as far as his basketball ability goes compared to his knees. What are we going to see from him this year? I mean, we just got his first look, but what are we going to see from him?
The first look was really good. He only played, roughly 10 minutes, but he shot 4 of 6. One of them was just kind of a half-court heave at the end of a quarter. But he looked really comfortable. He was looking to attack, which was the main thing. He wasn't settling for jump shots. I think the only jump shot he took was a pull-up jumper at the elbow that he made in transition. He made up his mind right away. He was going to take the shot, got separation, and looked. The jumper looked good. He was looking to attack. He was absorbing contact fine. The mask is taking some getting used to for Rose. He's even said that he doesn't like it. It's not very comfortable. But I thought the opening look, if that's the Derrick Rose the Bulls are going to get this year, that's a good sign. It's going to take some time for him to adjust and to get everybody involved. But in terms of Derrick Rose getting to the basket, he looked really, really good last night, and I think that's a great sign for the Bulls moving forward.
And moving to a different guard is, what does Kirk Heinrich have left in the tank? And please tell me that Hoiberg is going to hide him as much as possible on the bench.
I'm pretty sure a lot of people agree with you on that one. I'm one of them. I've been vouching for each one more to be Rose's backup for weeks now. So I totally understand where some fans are coming from in that aspect. But I love Kirk. He's been a Bull twice. He's had some really good years with the Bulls. But, he's heading towards 40, and it's just he's lost a step. The defense, you'll see glimpses of it from time to time. But the jump shot's not there. He just looks kind of lost. Running an offense. It looks like he's just kind of out there, just there, and in the decisions he has made, in some situations, it kind of makes you scratch your head. So hopefully Kirk Heinrich's a guy that stays deep on the bench, because looking at it last night specifically, Etuan Moore played 24 minutes. Aaron Brooks played 17. Kirk Heinrich played just 11. If that's the way things are going to go, the Bulls are in good shape. But if Kirk Heinrich is playing 20, 25 minutes a game, that's not a good thing. And I don't think Fred Hoiberg's the guy that's going to do that, unlike Tom Thibodeau.
Yeah, I want him to get Brian Scalabrine minutes.
Oh, the White Mamba. That's a character I miss, that's for sure.
So I've got a couple more questions that are rapid fire. So I'm just going to say them. You tell me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Sounds good.
Over, under. Rose plays 60 games this season.
Oh, man, that is a tough one. I'm going to say under, but I'm going to say under not by much. I'd say 55 to 59, somewhere around there, because I do think the injury bug is going to bite him again. And the reason why is just because I feel like, he's got to prove that he can stay healthy for longer than a 60-game period.
Okay, the next one is, how many 2015-2016 season All-Stars will there be on the Bulls roster?
Man. I'm going to say 2, and I'm going to say Jimmy Butler and Nikola Mirotic.
At the end of the season, who's going to lead this team in scoring average?
I want to say Jimmy Butler here, but I feel like in Derek's limited action, because I hate to say this, but I do feel like the injury bug is going to bite him. I'm going to say Derek Rose.
Number of wins.
I actually have a Bulls preview in the works at Pimpin' Ain't Easy. It'll drop this Monday. I actually have the Bulls projected at 48-34.
I would take that.
Yeah, I was thinking about that myself because I've seen everybody had them from about 49-51. So I went a little lower. I went 48-34, and I got them number 4 in the East behind Cleveland, Atlanta, and Miami. I'm a little worried that I'm too high on Miami, but I think when they're healthy, I think that's a team that can give a lot of problems to the East.
Yeah, they were hot for towards the end of the season last year, so they're a team on the rise.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're getting Chris Bosh back. You know, he's a multiple-time All-Star. He's a multiple-time NBA champion. He's a great player. I think, you know, with him back and Wade healthy and Hassan Whiteside and Goran Dragic, and Justice Winslow, who they just drafted, I think was a steal for them in the first 10 picks of the draft. I think that Miami team has something really special here if they can stay healthy.
All right, over/under December 1st, the point where Reggie Rose says something dumb and to the media.
Can I spam the under right now?
Oh, Reggie Rose. And one last question I have for you is the number of games in the regular season the Bulls play before Nick Friedel switches from this team is in basketball salary cap hell to, oh, they can beat LeBron.
Oh, wow. you know, Nick catches a lot of grief. I do like him. I think he's a good guy. But yeah, I've kind of noticed that too.
He's super bipolar. Like
you have no argument for me on that one. I've kind of thought the same thing from time to time.
It's kind of, he goes from like a credible journalist to Ron Santo in like 3 seconds. He's like, this team's in salary cap hell, they're done. And then they put 5 wins together. He's like, LeBron, you better watch out.
Yeah, I definitely hear you on that one. He kind of reminds me of some fans from time to time. It's like, Derek will have, an ankle issue or something, and then they'll freak out and hand in their season tickets, and then the Bulls will they'll go for 8 wins in 10 games, and everybody's saying they can win another championship. So I totally can relate on that. What were my options again for that over-under?
Number of games before he switches his stance from this is a team in salary cap hell to they can beat LeBron.
Oh, number of games. Oh, let's see. I'm going to throw out a random number, and I think it's going to be early in the year because I do think the Bulls can get off to a good start. I'm going to say about 19.
I think it even might be under that.
Honestly, it wouldn't shock me.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Glad you had me.
Everybody, make sure you check him out. Michael's personal Twitter is @MAWhitlow, and he's the co-editor for BullsBeatBlog at Twitter @BullsBeatBlog, and check that out at pippinainteasy.com. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Would love to thank our guest, Michael Whitlow. You can follow him on his personal Twitter @MAWhitlow, and that's MAWHITLOW. And also on his Bulls blog @BullsBeatBlog. And thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure you share this episode with all of your friends. And thank you guys so much for listening. Next week, I promise you, we'll do Blackhawks. I will have my reflections on the Cubs. I won't go into off-season plan, but we'll talk about and reflect on the season a little bit. And we will be back with a guest talking about the Bears versus Vikings. So thanks so much for listening, and until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like
Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on the plains. Bears 31 to -7.
the Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.